So, good evening. Hello. Welcome to another Monday with Conversations with a Masterful Raconteur. I am your host, Florida's own Barry S. McLeod. Truly the right kind of different. If you are in my loop and you touch in with me regularly, then you already know that I am producing a movie called SheDaPlaya. It's a comedy movie. And I've been doing a lot of promoting and awareness campaigns and stuff about the movie. Um, but today I wanted to just kind of take a break and talk about something on a different subject, especially because people ask me questions so many times like, Barry, where did your talent come from? And, you know, just, how are you able to do this and do that? The best person to explain that is God, okay? But in this human realm, this guy that you see on this picture, well, he married my mother a long time ago. And he and my mother, they had 3 children. And I am the third. My oldest brother is named after him. And then there's my sister, who eyes are just like his. And then there's me. And so um, the story has it where he left us when I was 3 months old. And he didn't look back, you know. And it's cool because by the time I got into 5th grade, my mother had remarried and she married this wonderful guy. He was a real man and he loved all of us and he stuck by us. And as far as a male influence, he's the best thing that ever happened to my life because he had a very strong and disciplined work ethic. And he instilled that in all of us. And I'm very grateful for that because little did I know back then, all of that discipline and work ethic and et cetera, all of those qualities will last me throughout my lifetime. All the stuff that I do that I'm consistent at, I am passionate at, my stepfather instilled that in me. And I'm very grateful. So I don't have any regrets about not growing up with my biological father, the guy on the picture here. Thanks to Facebook, somebody posted this picture of him and I looked at him and I'm like, wow. And it's really weird to see, for me, I'm talking about me. I imagine there's a lot of people who fit into my situation here. But thanks to Facebook and thanks to discovering other family members on my biological father's side, and some of them are so family oriented, especially like Paul and Sylvester and my cousin Sheila. Sheila, they're very family orientated and a lot of family pride, and so they post all of these pictures and stuff. And so for me to come on Facebook and see a picture of my biological father, and I don't know how old he was, but if I had to guess, he was somewhere close to 20. That's pretty amazing. It's kind of strange in its own way because I know for a fact that is my father. I know that. I don't know how much I look like him because I always felt like I looked like my mother's side of the family. And but I'm not talking down on him in any kind of way whatsoever, because when I reflect back, like my aunt, um, one of my aunts, my mother's twin sister, actually, back in those days, like my mother didn't say much about my biological father, and my mother's mother, who she raised me a big portion of my life, my grandmother. They just didn't talk about what happened back then. So I grew up kind of naive, and I didn't have questions. I mean, I was in good care. So I didn't have questions. And like I said, by the time my stepfather came in my life, I loved him. I still love him. He's deceased, and I still love him, you know. So um, I'm good. I don't have any negative energy in me toward my biological father. But I learned as I got older, I guess I started to think about it. And then I started thinking about relationships that I've had that didn't work out and stuff. And I was, I just never held it against him. Whatever happened between him and my mother is what happened. I never held it against him. Um, but I can remember my aunt, my mother's twin sister, she would say things like, yeah, your daddy, he used to play the piano. And so as I got older, I began to appreciate him for that, because music is on that side of the family, my father's side of the family, very, very strong. Now, my uncle, the late Bishop Sam Bannister, was my father's uncle. And and I had always, and growing up, I attributed a lot of my musical ability to my uncle, Bishop Bannister, because he had a church, and in the church he had musical equipment, and I loved going to his house as a kid. I was close to my cousins, his children, and I loved going to his house because he had like a closed in front porch, and on the porch he had all of these musical instruments, and he was a good-hearted man, and he wanted us to learn how to play. So when we would pick up an instrument and start fooling with it, he encouraged it. So um growing up, I always just attributed, you know my the musician part of my life to my uncle. Now, he was that person that gave me the opportunity to pick up a guitar as a little boy and fool with it. I was just fascinated with instruments, and he had drums, and I learned I could naturally play them. I couldn't naturally play guitar at that time, but I could naturally play the drums. I can play the drums today, even though I don't ever sit behind a drum set. But if I had to, I could prove to you that I can play. But um, I would eventually, learn how to play. I was fascinated with the bass guitar, so I would eventually learn how to play the bass guitar when I was 19, somewhere about 19 to 20. It's when I bought my bass guitar, who I affectionately named Baby Girl. So, um, am I going forward? Um, I started to think about it here and there, like, okay, my father, my biological father, was a musician. And then my uncle, his uncle, was a musician. And my cousins, who my uncle's children, especially one of them, his name is Mark. Mark he could play all the instruments. So we had this in our blood. you know? And so I'm grateful that I got that from him. You know, um, I didn't, I did get a chance to meet him. In fact, when I was 30 years old, you know, I had reached the point in my life where I wanted to meet him for myself, you know, answer some questions for myself. At the time, which I think he still does, he lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I've been hearing stories here and there about you know your real father, da 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 da. And like I said, I grew up with a wonderful stepfather, so I never had that empty void like I needed to know him. But I just reached a point in my life where certain questions that I didn't have answers to, and because of the old way of how older people were that didn't talk about things, I didn't feel comfortable to go to them and ask them questions. And so I lived with all of these questions inside, you know, all of them years. And then when I reached 30, I decided I was going to go on this quest to try to answer some of these questions, you know, that I've been living with. And it's not that I needed to, but I think I did need to. If I had never done it, I would have been fine. But it was something inside of me that I think, truthfully, I probably did need to. So I I went up to Raleigh with my girlfriend at that time. This was in 1988. So I'm 30 years old at that time, and I go up there, and so I was told uh, that he was a cab driver, right? So I went. I got a room. Me and my girlfriend, we got a room, and that night I got the phone book, and I looked in this taxi cab section, and they had this cab company called Ebony Cab Company. And so I said, wow, that sounds black. So the next morning I called Ebony Cab Company, and and I asked them, did they know him? And they said, yeah, we know him. He worked here for years. He said, but they said, but he don't work there anymore. He works at some other a different cab company. They told me that, so I called that cab company, and they said, no, yeah, he did work here, but he don't work here anymore. And so they said, we don't know where he is, but what you can do, you can go to the courthouse and go to some department in the courthouse, and they'll be able to help you. So I did. I went to the courthouse, and whoever I spoke with, they said, yeah, we know him, and this is his address. Ironically, as I vaguely remember, he lived either on the same street of the courthouse or the next street over or something like that. And he lived literally a mile away from the courthouse. So so I drives to his house, and and they told me, they say he drives a late model car. And so when I got there, I about as fast as I got there, I see this late model car pull up, and I'm looking, and I see this man get out of the car, and he doesn't see me at this time. So when I'm looking at him, and as soon as I could see his face, I knew for a fact, if he was not my daddy, I knew he was my brother's father, because my brother looked just like him. It's like I was looking at my brother, and I was like, wow. So here I am, I'm seeing my biological father for the first time. I'm 30 years old. So I had, in that moment, I watched him, and he got out of the car, and he went and opened the hood of his car, and he started doing something under the hood of his car. So I was like, I told my girlfriend, I said, well, you know what? I'm cool. I don't need to say nothing to him. It's fine. I see him. I know that he's my brother father. So I guess he probably my father too. So she said, well, Barry, she said, go say something to him. I said, I don't know if I want to now. And so she was like, Barry, we done came all the way from Florida all the way up here. There he is right there. Go say something. I thought about it some more. So then I get out the car and I walk over to where he's under the hood looking at something. And he looks up at me. He never stood up. He just looked up at me. And he went back to doing what he was doing. So I said, hello. And he said, hello. He looked at me, turned his head back down and doing what he's doing. So I said, are you so and so and so? And he looked at me. He said, yeah. He said, that's me. He said, yeah, I am. And I didn't say nothing. I said, well, I'm so and so and so, which y'all know me, Barry S. McLeod. The S stands for Scott. So my family back in the day they called me Scotty. Okay. So I told him, I said, well, I'm Scotty. And he was under the hood and he stopped and he froze. And slowly he looked up at me. And he was like he was looking at a ghost or something, And he was stunned. He was dazed. And I looked at him. And so I just asked him, I said, are you my father? And he immediately said, yes, I am. And it was just that moment right there, where like, it just kind of strange moment, And so I told him, I said, look, I didn't come to ask you for anything. And I didn't bring you anything either. I just had some questions and I needed to know. And you just answered my question and I appreciate it. And I was fine at that point. I was ready to go. And then he was like, well, come on in, let's talk. So I went inside his place and we talked. And, it was pleasant. And so he had married again, and his second wife, he has 2 daughters and a son. And so he took me over to their house and introduced me to them. And that was pretty cool. And so everything, when I met my other sisters and brother, it was a pretty cool experience. When I look, one of my sisters, I'm looking at her and she looks so much like my sister who I grew up with. And I was just like, wow. So it was just it was an experience like that. So anyway, we talked and fellowship for a little bit, and then I left, went back to my hotel room, and I think it was maybe a month later, he came to Florida, and according to him, it was his first time coming to Florida since he had left when I was just 3 months old. So he had his wife with him and my 2 sisters and my brother. And the interesting thing about his wife is she was a very nice person. She had features that I honestly, even to this day, I felt like, man, she reminded me so much of my mother. And I was like, wow. But she was really, really nice. And she was friendly to me. Everybody was friendly to me, And it was warm. And I had an appreciation for that. So anyway, when they come back to Florida, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had taken them to Disney World. And and to make a long story short, they would end up spending the night with me. I had like a 1 bedroom apartment at that time. And so I gave him and his wife my bed, and me and my two sisters and my little brother, we camped out in the living room. I had a Rottweiler at the time, so I put my dog outside, and and um, and that's how that happened, you know. And after a few years went by, um, I got to see him again in Jacksonville. One of his brothers had passed away who lived there, and if I recall, it was one of his brothers. So I went to the service, and he was there. At that service, he he walked past me, and I spoke to him, and then he stopped, and he turned around and looked at me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you." That was not a good moment for me because I felt some kind of way because, like, okay, I went up there, I met you. I didn't bring any negative energy. I was totally positive. You come to Florida, and I invite you to my home and accommodated everybody. And now you see me and you will act like you barely know who I am. Well, yeah, I felt some kind of way about that, but I held it all inside. I put my smile on, and we hugged and everything, and 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 I played it off for his sake. But on the inside, like I said, I was feeling some kind of way. And then I don't remember how long it was, but some months later, he came back to Florida, and he was came to Gainesville, and he was at my uncle's house. And my cousin Sheila was always wonderful about trying to bridge gaps and stuff like that. And she would always, "God, come on over, your daddy here." After Jacksonville, I wasn't that excited about seeing him because I didn't like the way he made me feel. And so um so I went anyway. And we talked, and everything was flowing, you know, pretty pretty cool. I was making sure that I was being man enough to not let anything negative, whatever I was feeling on the inside, I just kept it on the inside. I did not want to put any negative energy out toward him. And I did that. I was very, very careful to not do that. So at that particular time, I already had my hair salon, and I had my first nightclub. So I took him to both of my businesses, and I let him see my businesses. And I might have this wrong, but if I judge it by the way he reacted, he just didn't know what to say or how to react to that. It might have been a case of, darn, I abandoned this kid, my child, and look what this boy turned out to be. He turned out to be independent. He's doing this, he's doing that, and I didn't have anything to do with it. That's how I think he felt. And he may not have felt that way, but that was the vibe and the demeanor and everything that he had. And there I was again trying to be big enough to have some compassion for him and not let him feel bad, because whether what I have come to realize is that what I've done with my life, it was going to happen whether I was brought, if he had raised me, or however, wherever I would have lived on this planet Earth, I am I am convinced that the things that I do with my God-given talents, they was going to happen. They was going to manifest. I know that it was in me to do the things that I'm doing, and I was determined. I just was not going to ever let anything stop me. In fact, the girlfriend that I was with, um, when I went up and met him, we were still seeing each other during this time. And one of the things she said to me that I guess actually I held against her, but she would say things to me like, because I was operating businesses, and then I was doing community events. And back then I had a fashion troupe that I was doing, and I was building relationships and learning how to get out in the community and and have an event and bring people together, and I was learning that grind. And she said to me, she said, Barry, why don't you just get a job, a 9 to 5 job like everybody, every other man, and just come home? She sealed her fate with me when she said that. You know, um, I didn't say that to her. I I burrowed that inside, and I'm like, girl, you done lost your bleep bleep mind. I'm I'm destined to do these things. If I'm not doing these things, I am an unhappy person and I'm incomplete, and I would drift into some areas where my life would be very different. And so these things that I have been doing, they have kept me grounded. They have kept me uh, they've kept me focused. They have kept me driven. They have kept me motivated. You know, that's why when you look at my resume, you see where I went from one production to the next production, to the next production, to the next production, year after year after year. Now I got 4+ decades of doing all of this stuff that I have been doing. I never had a magic wand. It's just been lately that I'm learning about grants. I didn't have nobody even talking to me about grants. I didn't have sponsors. I didn't have resources. I just learned how to beat the bushes. One of my best friends, the late great B Magic, Harold Bernard Beatty. One of the things why I loved him so dearly, because he was like a big brother to me, and he was in the community doing events and stuff, and getting people to attend his events and selling tickets and stuff. And he taught me the foundation of that. He taught me those things. That's why I was always close to him, always admired him, and we was always there for each other, you know. But he showed me a lot of some fundamentals of how to do that. So when you look at where I'm at now and the things that I'm doing, I had never had a magic wand. Excuse me. It didn't just happen. I literally stayed focused. I stayed in the grind. I stayed in it. I'd never let a relationship stop me. I got 3 beautiful children, and my children will tell you, he gonna do it. He gonna do it because I was always trying to be the example for my children that y'all see what your daddy doing. You got me in you. So whatever talents you have are what they are and whatever you want to do. But you see how I don't quit. I just keep going. I was trying to set that example for them and inspire them and encourage them, and also let them be hands-on with me here and there. And I did those things. So um, when it's all said and done, in this moment, when I look back, regardless of the sour emotions that came from my experiences with my biological father, um, I got a lot of my talents from this dude. I got a lot of my talents from this dude, especially music. I don't know what I would choose if I could only do just one talent that I have. But if I was pressured, it probably have to be music because I love music just that much. In every production that I have done, including some of the tracks that you're going to hear in SheDaPlaya, some of that's my original music. I did open it up for some other artists because in this season of my life, I'm trying to give some opportunity to some other people who I feel are deserving, who are putting the work in and grinding. They're not talking about it, they are being about it. I feel like it's important for me at this in this season of my life to help some young people, and so I have some other people uh, that they've done some marvelous work with music, and I'm using some of their music in SheDaPlaya. But if you go to any play that I have done, especially the plays where we were singing, I had actors on the stage singing. All of that was my music that I wrote, all of it. And most of it, I use my sequencer where I program my own drums, my bass track, 2 or 3 keyboard tracks, and put horn tracks in there. That's me. So probably it would be music. But the very first thing that I ever learned how to do was draw. That's the first thing I ever learned how to do is draw. And I can draw almost anything in black and white or color, large size or small size. So that is probably my absolute best talent. But if I could only choose one, I probably would choose music. I don't know. I just love music like that. And I never got bored with music. Art, I got to where I did it sparingly here and there, but music, I never stopped. I never stopped. So, yeah, my biological father, I'm told, was a piano player. I know that my uncle was. My uncle Sam Bannister was a bad dude, man. That joker could play. He played the guitar. He played the keyboard. He sang. And the story, as it was told to me, was him and my uncle. They came from wherever they came from, North Carolina or New Jersey. It might have been New Jersey. I don't totally remember. But they came down here and they started a church, and both of them were musicians in the church they started. They met these 2 twins and married them, and one of them was my mother. So um, I have to be grateful to my biological father for that. You know, um, it's a it's a strange and a kind of sad feeling that when I see pictures posted up of him now on Facebook. He's an older man. His health has declined, but old boy's still kicking. He is still kicking, and I'm very, very happy about that. You know, um, so I know that I got a younger brother who's there with him. If you're watching this live, it's really nice and cool seeing how y'all sticking by him and looking out for him. You know, as your brother, I'm saying that. We don't talk, we don't see each other, but we can't change the fact that we are blood. Can't change that. It's true. So I'm happy to see that y'all sticking by him and that he hanging in there, and I hope that he continue to hang as long as God gonna let him hang, and that he be all right. But yeah, this dude right here, that's him. I asked him. I said, "Are you my father?" He did not hesitate. He told me, "Say, yeah, I'm your father." I know for a fact he my brother and my sister father because they look like him. My sister got his eyes. But anyway, I did this one here really for the family. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I wasn't going to try to make it be like all something else that is not. I told it, y'all, just how it is. 100. Straight 100. If you don't like my story, you just don't like it. I don't think I said anything derogatory or demeaning or disrespectful. But that is actually what happened. That's how it happened. And I am grateful. that for all the talent that I have that comes from him and our side of the family on his side of the family. I'm going to touch out now, y'all. Stay in the loop and stay in touch with me. I want y'all to see my new movie, SheDaPlaya. It's very, very good. I'm getting ready to do an official trailer for it, and I'll be putting it out there. I appreciate all the feedback that I've gotten from the trailer that I put out there already. I needed to get a consensus of how people would respond, and it has been very, very positive, and I'm happy about that. We're going to be having our private screening soon, and that private screening is for the actors, whether you were extra or not, and also for our GoFundMe supporters. Okay, so if you were a GoFundMe supporter or an extra, and you're watching me right now, and you want to come to the private screening, let me know, because it's only for us. Okay, and I'm going to release it to the public soon after we have our private screening. So I have one more chance to get some feedback and go back and tighten up any screws that I need to tighten up before I release it. So y'all stay in touch with me, and be on the lookout for my new uproarious comedy movie, SheDaPlaya. Until next week, I'm going to touch out now. Florida's own Barry S. McLeod, truly the right kind of different.